hopefully I'll be able to share some ideas of how things, went
Yes, sir.
tomorrow.
Sure.
But it's something that we have to do and get around this idea. And so there's too many people dying, and we have to get to the roots of these problems and get to the root causes of these issues and address them as soon as possible.
Yes, sir. All right. Again, let's give you contact information, since you are, of course, the founder, along with, of course, Sister Tracy of the American African Committee. So let's give you contact information on that.
Thank you. If there is any ideas, or if there's any questions, or if there's any comments, see, some people say, well, I have a top clearance job, and even though I know that things are going bad, I can't just say things right out.
Yes, sir.
I can't speak right out. Well, we're going to help, to address that. Send, your anonymous
right.
information.
Well, if you are anonymous with the Alphabet Boys, the NSA, because I know they like to hear what we say, the FBI, FBI, the CIA, the DIA, and all the rest of those Alphabet Boys we're at a critical point in this country where, not just the country, but the world. It's just been coming out over the past 30 days. We're in an information explosion where all of this is accelerating now, that this has been ongoing. This has been almost standard operating procedure against the American people. So, and that's just the ones that go to work every day, and they don't do anything but, they like that little mouse, that little gerbil on the wheel that, you too, unfortunately, are now being labeled as an enemy of the state for just wanting to do the right things and ask questions and demand answers from your elected officials. But please continue with what you were saying, brother.
NewAmericanAfrican@gmail.com. NewAmericanAfrican@gmail.com. I will make sure that we get that information out there. Send your thoughts, questions, and comments. Folks come up to me all the time and say, well, what do I think about this newest policy? Or I have these feelings, or some of those of our elderly who have lived through the struggle and lived through the history, who have so much information to provide.
Right.
Talk to your grandparents and talk to those, who had that information, and let's, share this open dialogue. We can also be found at AACMTE. That's Facebook.com/AACMTE. The American African Committee site on Facebook, where we're daily posting. We ask, for us to have this kind of daisy chain of information. What we get from the state of the city,
yes, sir,
will end up on American African Committee website, and then therefore you should share it as well, so that we kind of keep a consistent line of communication from the top news stories going on.
Yes, sir.
Or if you'd like to call directly, my cell phone 443-623-4005 about any inquiries on these issues and topics that we speak of.
Yes, sir. All right. Thoughts, comments, man, on Independence Day. Not Independence Day from Will Smith, the movie, of course. We know he was in one. They say he won't be able to make it around for two. And, of course, not Independence Day, as some have talked about, that this could be really a day that the Zionists celebrate their liberty. And not Independence Day in terms of Christmas addicts, not Independence Day as far as what many have said from the movie National Treasure and others, that this was all about Prince Hall, who was a Freemason, and they were bringing the Freemason charter onto the ship in Boston, Massachusetts. Not Independence Day in terms of, again, looking at Freemasonry and Jay-Z, who is in the lodge, the Blue Lodge, with his Blueprint CD, and now the Magna Carta Holy Grail CD coming out today. But thoughts and comments on Independence Day 2013 and looking at America. Some would call it the state of this union or the health of this country right now, when we look at all of the things that are taking place in America and outside of America. Thoughts and comments on Independence Day 2013.
Yeah, well, you just said that those elements within government are trying to turn back the hands of time on the gains that our ancestors have put down blood, sweat, and tears for. When I think of the word independence,
yes,
and I say, okay, well, does that apply to me? Do we have, self-determination as a people, African people on this earth, in America and throughout the diaspora? I would say that no, we do not have that element of self-determination to be able to decide for ourselves what our reality should be based on our history and our culture.
Right.
When I look at economic freedom, do we have independence in that?
Yes, sir.
And the answer is no. Because when we look at the financial disparities and the income disparities between blacks and other cultural groups, we do not see that. And, we've been trying and working hard to achieve that, but those goals have always been, put aside and not fulfilled.
That's right.
When I look at political freedom,
yes,
do we have an independence in our political system? Are we seeing our neighborhoods, being addressed sufficiently from elected officials, from our mayors, from our governors, from those senators. Are they using political power to help all those citizens in America, including blacks?
That's right.
I don't see it.
Yeah, what I'm going to do over the next couple of days is play the Dr. King I Have a Dream speech, but not the end, but the beginning, when Dr. King lays out the conditions of blacks in America. And that was in 1963, and we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of that March on Washington, in which Dr. King talked about how the Negro lives in exile on a lonely island of poverty, when we live in a ocean, where we see an ocean of vast wealth, then the Negro lives in exile. And this is what we see even here in the city of Baltimore, where the mayor treats blacks as if we are those living in exile, while she treats those that are coming into the city, into this country, like they in a express lane. You know what I mean? Like they're in an express aisle and treat us like we're in exile for the most part. You know what I mean? Like she in a 15 item or less, and they move very quickly to get their rights and get what it is that they need. But those that have lived in the city are treated as if they're living in exile. So I think that that's very important that we examine that and talk about that. And we're going to talk about in a few minutes this water bill issue, which the Board of Estimates voted on yesterday under the mayor. She is the one who controls it because she has the most votes in terms of herself, her head of the Department of Public Works, Al Fox, or Al Wolf, along with George Nielsen, the city solicitor. So they voted yesterday to increase the water bill of the citizens, or the rate of the water bill of the citizens in the city of Baltimore, by 37%. Not 7%, not 9%, not 10%, but again, 37% over the next 2 to 3 years, which means many people will no longer be able to live in this city at the rate that they're being taxed and waxed and axed out of the city right now. And you have corporations, as we found out and has been talking about, and I got to thank Brother John, Mama Juanita, and the brothers and sisters from Little Africa who shared that information with me years ago. Then Miss Stewart came along, Rhonda Winbush, and others that have come along, and we thank them for coming along. But we all have to stand strong around this issue. We need more court action in terms of court injunction. So I heard City Clerk Frank Conaway say that he was speaking against it. But as a city clerk, I think and know that he can do more to press this mayor and stress this mayor regarding taking people home to water bills. Time dictates that agenda. We saw in Detroit, I think it was a sheriff a few years ago, who said that he wasn't foreclosing on any homes in Detroit. And I thought it was interesting that the mayor would bring up Detroit and try to use some scare tactics that we have to call her bluff, when she would try to say that if we do not accept these draconian fascistic measures in terms of, again, going up in the water rates and acceleration rates, while allowing corporations and organizations from the Oreos to the Ravens to institutions like Sparrows Point that owed $5 million and got off selling Sparrows Point without paying that money, but then putting this on the backs of poor people, working class people, and middle class people, then that's wrong. But at the time that we've seen her do that, and then now try to use Detroit, when Detroit was destroyed by those same predatory Wall Street bankers that have destroyed most institutions and most municipalities around this country right now. And here was a mayor that could sit down and negotiate, her and her predecessor. They sat down and negotiated with these bankers out of court settlements. And the citizens of Baltimore and the state of Maryland, even with that schmuck attorney general, only received $2,000. So how is it the mayor can negotiate with the predatory bankers from Wells Fargo, Citigroup, Bank of America, but yet she cannot negotiate with the citizens in the city of Baltimore? Thoughts and comments on that, brother?
Because she may not desire to do so.
Yes, sir. Right.
And I think this is the most difficult part that our people have to understand. See, we say, well, how can someone be so wrong? How can someone be so blatant in their activities?
Yes.
Well, maybe that is not the agenda that they have. Right. Or, okay, they're not under control. They're not in control.
Right.
Okay, so if the banks and the corporations and all of them tell her what she's going to do.
Some economic hitmen are down there behind the scenes. Yes,
I'll accept that too.
Right.
And there's options for both of those, in terms of what we must do.
Right.
If that's the case, that she has no power and that there's nothing that she can do, then, well, okay, fine. Then we're going to make sure that someone gets in there that is going to do a little more and that can really stand up and have that backbone against them. And, we should be prepared to support them in doing that. Detroit has gone through its bankruptcy.
Right.
And just a few months ago, we were sitting here talking about how people are losing their homes over expensive water bills.
Right.
So how convenient, that the banks and all of them, they say, well, let's just up the rate some more.
That's right.
So we can get more homes faster. We need more money faster.
That's right. Yes.
So I would make the case that since, people have been to school, they've been educated, and they've gone to college, they can read articles, I would lean more towards saying that she might not be interested in actually doing something.
And being the mayor. She don't want to do anything. She really ain't interested in being the mayor except all the perks that came with it.
Especially since, we can have a documented timeline of these kind of insensitive comments around these issues that have come out. As we saw
the other day. Right. I wonder if she's even in the city of Baltimore, because we know the last holiday she was in Delaware. So we got to find out if Miss Delaware down there, or Miss Delaware down there in City Hall is actually in Baltimore. She could be with her lobbyist friend Lisa Harrod-Jones and Sean Malone. But let me go to this clip talking about the water rate increase, courtesy of WBAL. Then we come back, open up the lines, take your thoughts, questions, comments before we go a little deeper into the show and the flow this afternoon. Listen to this courtesy of WBAL talking about the Board of Estimates or Board of Guesstimates vote to increase the rates of the water bills in the city of Baltimore. Not around the state, not around the counties, only the citizens in the city of Baltimore.
Early fireworks at City Hall this morning as those new higher water rates were approved to the tune of 37% over the next 3 years. I-Team lead investigative reporter Jane Miller was there. She joins us live in the newsroom with that story. Jane.
Donna, the mayor's votes won out as she invoked the story of Detroit to support her case. The vote to raise water and sewer rates passed by a 3-2 vote on the city's Board of Estimates.
The motion carries.
But not before one of the no votes. City Comptroller Joan Pratt scolded city water officials for what she described as blowing off city auditors yesterday.
They waited all day until 6 p.m. to meet with... You're laughing. You think it's funny. You did not get back to the Department of Audits. You put them off. That just speaks to the lack of collaboration and cooperation with the Department of Public Works. And arrogance. And lack of respect.
The audit presented today before the vote challenged the proposed rate hike. Auditors say the proposed hike is 2% higher than necessary. The city has failed to collect $24.5 million in overdue bills, and county customers face less penalties than city customers for failure to pay. Despite the audit, the mayor argued the city can't afford to do without the bigger increase.
But our system is broken, it's failing, and it is in need of major repair. And I don't have the luxury just to vote no on that.
The water hikes go into effect immediately, joining the so-called rain tax, the higher bottle tax, and likely a new bag tax. The mayor says she understands the burden, but won't back down from what she calls tough choices.
I expect there to be unrest. I expect there to be rancor, but I don't want the disappointment and the frustration and the sadness that cities like Detroit have to face.
Detroit's finances are so bad, it's now in the hands of an emergency manager and on the brink of bankruptcy.
Are you suggesting that Baltimore is on the same path as Detroit? I'm suggesting, without making the major reforms that we are doing, that we would be headed in the same direction as several cities around the country who were not willing to make the tough decisions, that were not willing to ruffle feathers.
The other no vote on the issue today was City Council President Jack Young. Comptroller Joan Pratt argues if the city got better at collecting on delinquencies, it could save 1% on the water rate for every $870,000 it collects. Reporting live tonight from the newsroom, I'm Jane Miller, WBAL TV 11 News.
Welcome back. I'm going to open up the line shortly, but I'm going to get my brother Jimothy thoughts and comments on what we just heard. But shame on that mayor down there, man. She really has no end to the depths of how low she's willing to go from talking about unrest. I don't think she's seen unrest in this city yet. But to talk about unrest in the city of Baltimore around her fleecing you while others are leasing her, and then to try to use these extortion tactics to talk about Detroit. Well, if you don't let us raise it, if you don't let us do it, we could be in the same condition of Detroit. How is that possible? When if we would be placed in that condition, it would only be because what she is doing in terms of working with these bankers and those that are making the decisions behind the scenes from the Greater Baltimore Committee or the Lesser Baltimore Committee and these economic hitmen. But I'm clear, as I saw in Detroit, brother, that there is a plan to perhaps privatize the Department of Public Works and to privatize the water department. So you got to keep your eyes open for that, because one of the businesses or organizations that I had talked about when I talked about the issue of our nuclear plants in America being guarded